do like a stream.
Is why Autoserge have been upgraded with credit card functionality, designed to make the hassle of finding a new card
A thing of the past.
so now Autoserge can help me find the right card.
Success!
Now with credit card eligibility check. Compare the market. Keep life simple.
Hello, Rick here with a lore spotlight video to look at one of Trek's underappreciated background characters. Well, in this case, a ship. You know, you get those characters that orbit the main cast. They're named and relevant for a while, but not essential, but are recurring members of the crew? Well, the USS Hood is one of them. Only made from metal, and 466 metres long. Also warp capable. Look, my point is, the USS Hood is an Excelsior-class starship that has a legacy all of its own. And by this I mean that, like the Enterprise, it is named after previous Starfleet vessels, and even previous vessels that predate mankind's exploration of the stars. There have been several naval vessels termed the HMS Hood as far back as the 19th century, with the latest being an Admiral-class battlecruiser. In accordance with its namesakes, the Federation-built vessels often found themselves engaged in combat too. In 2240, the Constitution-class starship program was underway, with the goal of creating a Federation vessel that could chart deep space and represented the highest of Starfleet's technologies. The first of these was the USS Constitution, followed by the Enterprise, the Farragut, and the USS Hood, NCC 1703. Like the other Constitution-class vessels, the Hood was easily able to be refitted and overhauled, being one of the first to receive the new phaser arrays. This vessel was assigned a myriad of captains over its life, suggesting that it, unlike the Enterprise, was often kept within arm's reach of Federation space. Captains Michaela Harare, Kenneth Dodge, Mark Rossiu, Glenn Barton, Joaquin Martinez, Hugo Revere, and Commodore Lyle Craig. The USS Hood took part in the M5 experimental war games of 2268 against the USS Enterprise and was severely damaged in the encounter, and one of the only original series mentions of the ship. According to beta content, the USS Hood was destroyed in 2270 near the neutral zone, not by Romulans however. The replacement vessel, the Excelsior-class USS Hood NCC 42296, was seen a lot more frequently in the next generation. Commander Riker served as its first officer from 2361 to 2364, before transferring to the USS Enterprise NCC 1701D. Its captain was Robert DeSoto, and its first appearance on screen in 2364 alongside the Enterprise D's maiden voyage, though there are records that say it was in operation as far back as the turn of the century. As an Excelsior-class vessel, this could be the case, the project being initiated in the 2280s. However, the registry number seems to indicate a later date of commission than the early Excelsior classes, as they bore the registries starting in the 2000s. Although registry numbers are not a good indicator of age by themselves, Starfleet really only started using 5-digit codes in the 24th century. Of course, there was some early model of the USS Hood that bore the shorter registry, so perhaps it was changed at a later date. The ship would serve to rendezvous with the Enterprise several more times throughout its life, usually providing support in some function, and in 2369 it underwent a major upgrade at Starbase 134. This was just as well, as soon the Dominion War erupted and Starfleet suddenly found itself switching to military operations. This was true of the Hood too, as it took part in Operation Return, the Sisko-Ross planned mission to recapture the Bajor system from Dominion forces. It seemed to be part of Admiral William Ross's fleet jurisdiction, as it also took part in the First Battle of Chintaka. Towards the end of the Dominion War, the Hood was severely damaged and saw many casualties. To give some names to the lost, First Officer Lieutenant Commander Dina Voskunsky and the family of Dr. Keith Hughes. Being involved in so many battles, there were bound to be casualties, especially on a ship that had been in service for as long as the USS Hood. It seems ships of this namesake are fated for strife. Amazingly, however, unlike many other vessels ranging from Defiant class to Galaxy class, the aged Excelsior design of the USS Hood must have had something going for it, as it survived the Dominion War, and was last seen responding to the USS Enterprise E's call for aid when facing down the IRW Scimitar at the Battle of Basin Rift in Star Trek Nemesis. This vessel, as far as I'm concerned, is a classic, and well deserving of a continuing lineage. And in an alternate timeline of 2408, a Galaxy-class vessel was in service bearing the same name. I think this ship first crept into my attention during Deep Space Nine's Dominion War arcs, as a recurring name-dropped ship in briefings and such. Maybe I like it because it's an Excelsior class and that's my fav, or perhaps I like the idea that it personifies what the Excelsior class was about. Aside from the transwarp experiment, the Excelsior came to be seen as the reliable backbone, not the fastest nor the strongest vessel. Outmatched by later designs, it nonetheless was dragged up to a decent spec in order to protect the United Federation of Planets. There are a couple more ships that share this sort of treatment, and although I enjoy seeing new ships and designs, it's also nice to see this sort of universal consistency brought to bear in the franchise, one of Star Trek's greatest strengths. Anyway, thanks for listening. Would you like more of these videos on ship lineages? I'm sure there must be others. Until the next vid, I've been Rick, and goodbye. The United Federation of Planets stands for the progress of all its member worlds, through unity and the pushing of boundaries both scientific and exploratory. For this reason, and common good, the many research arms of Starfleet and the Federation have experimented with all sorts of technologies and created many marvellous feats, such as the warp drive, transporters and replicators. But there is also a long list of failed experiments, and creations too dangerous to ever be used again. Hi, Rick here, and I thought I'd put together a list of 8 of the Federation's failed experiments, whether through folly, ignorance, or misguided ethics. First off, some ground rules. These experiments have to have been conducted by a Federation world, Starfleet, or at the very least, have a Starfleet blessing. Secondly, they have to have failed or been suspended. So for this reason, the USS Excelsior's great experiment of transwarp in 2285 will not be on this list, as we never get official confirmation that it failed entirely, and I will be ranking these in order of fatalities caused. This may not be a complete list, but these are the ones that stood out to me the most. So, starting off at number 8, with a great outcome of 0 casualties, but a potential for exploration matched only by its potential for disaster, we have the transwarp experiments of 2364, where the USS Enterprise NCC-1701D is catapulted across the universe to the M33 Triangulum Galaxy, and then to a realm where thought and physics are one. The experiment itself was led by specialist Kaczynski, whose antimatter equations had improved the warp factor of several Starfleet vessels. In reality, this increase in propulsion was achieved by the influence of a mysterious entity known simply as the Traveller, who could seemingly manipulate space-time with his thoughts alone. Though it required a great deal of effort on his part, he could even explore other realities. Thankfully, the Traveller seems benign and simply wished to aid, or maybe simply observe, Starfleet personnel, eventually singling out a young Wesley Crusher as a being with a mind capable of someday understanding how the Traveller operated. This project was shelved with the reveal of the Traveller's true nature and the realisation that Kaczynski's alterations only ever produced a marginal increase in efficiency. The guy was an ass anyway. Starfleet's obsession with faster and faster speeds is understandable, as arguably the majority of its purpose is to boldly go where no one has gone before, and you can boldly go a lot more places if it gets done faster. So, the number 7 spot on this list goes to Lieutenant Tom Paris, and that episode of Star Trek Voyager. You know, the one that upsets the entire warp scale and what we know of evolution in one fell swoop. In 2372, the crew of the USS Voyager NCC 74656 discovers a new form of dilithium that allowed for higher and higher warp velocities, inching ever closer to the elusive warp 10 threshold, the theoretical maximum warp speed of infinite velocity. As the ship was stranded in the Delta Quadrant and facing a 70-year journey back to Earth, Paris leapt at the chance to test this new dilithium. After several promising simulations, he was given the go-ahead from Captain Janeway to perform a manned test in a Class II shuttle named Cochrane. He seemingly achieves the unobtainable velocity or something like it, as the shuttle's sensors logs were filled to capacity with readings from all over the galaxy. Paris himself was rendered unconscious by the experiment, but seems to have suffered no ill effects. Soon after, we get a glimpse into Trek's version of body horror as Paris begins to slowly mutate, hyper-evolve into a potential future human form. This form ends up resembling a land catfish amphibious thing, but not before he steals away Captain Janeway in a delirium and takes the Cochrane out for another spin. Eventually, the missing two officers were located, both having fully mutated and had even reproduced. Fortunately, this experiment resulted in no casualties, and the process was reversible, with the two restored humans having no recollection of the events. Well, no casualties, except the 3 lizard babies who are probably going to die without their parents on some forgotten world lost in the Delta Quadrant. Paris's Warp 10 program was shelved for the unavoidable mutative effects it seemed to have, and this episode often cited as one of the worst offenders to continuity and pre-existing canon. I'd scrap it for the second part alone. Hyper-evolved my ass. Moving on. Often, it's the best of intentions that can breed the worst outcomes. One such device was designed to bring life to barren worlds, but in the wrong hands would lay waste to a world, even destroying it entirely. The Genesis device was the shake and bake of terraforming, with a lifeless planet's components broken down and utilised in a complex matrix to form the building blocks of a habitable Class M world. The project was headed by Dr. Carol Marcus and assisted by her and James Kirk's son, David Marcus. This is the first project on the list to be kept secret from the general public, and with good reason. The concern comes pretty much from the first part of this Genesis. You see, the probe will destroy whatever environment was present on the planet before it was deployed in its runaway reaction, before replacing it with a new one. The device was stolen and used by Khan Noonien Singh, where it utilised the components of the Mutara Nebula to form a whole new world, and a whole new fantastic point of view. The planet, dubbed the Genesis Planet, was completely unstable, attributed to the protomatter used at the device's core, and although life teemed across its surface, the planet eventually tore itself apart. The Federation had set out to create an engine of life and ultimately just built a new way to destroy a planet. This is how the Klingons saw it too, which led to several more deaths in the attempted procurement of the research, the death of David Marcus and indirectly the destruction of the USS Enterprise. Unsurprisingly, this project was cancelled after these events, but in apocryphal content, some of the technologies were salvaged and used in watered-down versions of terraforming programs, so not a complete waste. Still, it ranks higher on my list for the sheer destructive potential. At number 5, we have another classified one, and the first on the list with direct casualties. In 2311, the United Federation of Planets and the Romulan Star Empire signed the Treaty of Algeron, which officially established new neutral zone territories between the two powers and effectively established a peace between the two enemy states. One of its directives stated that the United Federation of Planets was not to pursue the development of starship cloaking technology, a means by which a vessel could hide from sensors and view to conduct reconnaissance. In 2358, Starfleet seemed to bend, if not downright break this article, by attempting to create a phasing cloaking device. I've done a video on the interphase before, but suffice to say, A phase cloak and a regular cloak are different technologies, but produce similar effects. This project was headed by Starfleet Intelligence and tested on the research vessel the USS Pegasus under the command of Captain Pressman. The cloak would produce a phase effect to bring the ship out of phase with solid matter, both leading to light outside of the field passing through it, and more impressively, solid matter. The device was field tested aboard the Oberth class vessel, and the crew, unaware of the experiment until that moment, mutinied against Pressman, led by the XO. During the ensuing skirmish, 7 crew members, including the captain and an ensign William Riker, escaped. However, a malfunction caused the ship to lose control, and it was seemingly destroyed along with all hands. In 2370, Admiral Pressman took the USS Enterprise NCC-1701D on a mission to locate the remains of the USS Pegasus, and the clandestine experiment was revealed to the dismay of Captain Picard and the Romulan Star Empire. The project, officially cancelled 12 years earlier, was made public, along with the political fallout from the violation of the treaty on the Federation's end, and the Oberth ship has a crew complement of up to 80 personnel, and only 7 survived. We can estimate the death toll at around 73 Starfleet officers. Honestly, the Treaty of Olgeron is a sucky deal for the Federation, but it did maintain the peace, despite the Romulans constantly looking for a justification to break it. The next one on my list is actually a bit of an odd one, and you may wish to drop it a rung, as technically it has a death count of 0, or approximately 124 to 140. Oh Voyager, what did you do this time? In 2374, the USS Voyager was making its way lazily back home when it encountered the Dauntless, a fictional Starfleet vessel that was equipped with the Quantum Slipstream Drive, another method of faster-than-warp travel. The ship turned out to be too good to be true, but Voyager did escape with some pretty detailed scans of the drive, and later that year they managed to replicate the technology. This form of travel allows for greater speeds than traditional warp drive, and brings a ship into a slipstream of quantum energy. I have no idea what that means, but it makes them go. Testing of the device seemed promising, but necessitated the use of a shuttlecraft to fly in front of the Intrepid starship to relay phase variance calculations back to the mothership. Failing to do so would drop the ships out of the slipstream or violently explode the drive. This is exactly what comes to pass, leading to Voyager crashing on an icy planet in the Takara sector on the border of the Alpha Quadrant. All aboard are killed. The shuttle, piloted by Ensign Harry Kim and Commander Chakotay, make it back to Starfleet with the bad news, and then spend the remainder of their life trying to undo the mistake caused by an incorrect calculation. They fix the issue and drop the Voyager out of slipstream moments before the accident occurs, thereby changing history. So this project was put on ice, for the near death it caused for the crew of the USS Voyager, a crew complement of around 124 to 140-ish, depending on the amount of Maquis recruited. Still a lot of people, and technically it did fail before it didn't. Look, my point is, when you have to resort to time travel to get a project to work, you goofed up somewhere. This technology is still far too valuable to abandon altogether, however, and here's hoping that after the return of the Voyager to the Alpha Quadrant, it was one of the many intriguing technologies that Starfleet got to play with. Still, due to a lack of resources to perfect and the potential for catastrophe, the Quantum Slipstream project was mothballed. For now. Next up is the... What? My screen. Damn it. Look, not now. Task Manager. End. Process. There. The Omega Directive. The Omega particle is a subatomic little bubble of energy with enough power to fuel a starship. A single molecule has the power of a warp core, and some even theorise that this little ball of energy was responsible for the Big Bang. However, the particle is nearly impossible to synthesise, and even when it is created, it is unstable and detonates. Starfleet was researching this potential energy source around 2268 at a classified research facility in the Lantaru sector, a team of 127 scientists and researchers led by Dr. Bendes Keteract were able to synthesize a molecule after decades of theorizing and attempts. It immediately destabilized and exploded. The Omega effect rips through subspace, destroying it, as well as the very physical effects of destruction that rippled across the system. 7 light years of space were affected by the blast, and due to the damage to subspace, no warp travel is possible in the system, nor FTL communications. A single molecule did this. So, Starfleet classified all knowledge of the Omega particle and placed a standing order to all captains that any Omega molecules detected were to be disposed of by a specialised team. This single incident created a directive that surpassed all others and is kept a complete secret from anyone below the rank of captain. Even the Prime Directive can be overruled, so great is the potential danger of Omega. The irony is that Omega molecules can be stabilised, but it seems to only do so in large quantities, meaning that the amount needed to create a stable energy source would likely be a galaxy-spanning explosion if it went bad. Within the Federation, however, Keteract's experiment cost 127 lives, but it was the knowledge of such a tantalising prize that was the real lasting damage. At number 2, based solely on the number of deaths it directly caused, is the infamous displacement-activated Spore Hub drive. This, frankly insane-sounding technology attempts to utilise a form of interphasic prototaxites stellivatory to connect a ship to the mycelial network that spans, out of phase, throughout the galaxy. This drive was the brainchild of Drs. Paul Stamets and Justin Strahl, 2 astroneucologists in Starfleet. Oh, where to begin? I've delved into why the Spore drive was shelved before, but here's a summary. First off, the drive required the creation of a whole new class of vessel, the Crossfield class, and only 2 were made, the USS Glenn NCC 1030 and the USS Discovery 1031. This is already a massive resource investment for Starfleet. Then it becomes apparent that a ship's computer, no matter how advanced, cannot process the information required to navigate the mycelial network, so an organic pilot is necessary. This, in turn, means that you either have to genetically modify a human to be able to do this, which goes against Federation law, or enslave a possibly sentient space tardigrade to do the work for you. Also not very Federation. On top of this, multiple instances of temporal and spatial anomalies, the destruction of another lifeform's native habitat, and the accidental dimension hopping all contribute to this project being halted despite working. Oh, and the deaths. The USS Glenn's entire crew complement of 136 was completely wiped out when they exited a jump into a Hawking radiation firewall, which created the dimension-breaking engine to spin out, as Stamets puts it. Basically, the ship was spun around really fast, and it splattered the crew everywhere, along with twisting them on a dimensional level. This on its own puts the fatality count at higher than the Omega experiment, but then it was officially reported to Starfleet that the USS Discovery NCC 1031 had suffered a spore drive related explosion. So at that point, official records list about 272 spore drive related deaths, dwarfing all but one other on this list. At number 1, we have the creation of the marshmallow dispenser from Star Trek V. No, I'm joking. At number 1, we have the first simulated wargame test of the M5 computer. Oh, Dickie Daystrom, what did you do? The Multitronic Unit version 5 was created by Dr. Richard Daystrom and field tested in 2268 aboard the USS Enterprise, NCC 1701. The aim was to produce an advanced computer system that could react logically and command a starship in lieu of a crew. The M5 was the first working prototype and modelled on the memory engrams of its creator. The crew of the Enterprise was reduced to 20 personnel, and the tests began, pitting it against multiple situations, culminating in a War Games simulation against 4 other Constitution-class vessels, each with a full crew complement. Things started going wrong when the M5 accidentally killed one of the Enterprise crew, though this was dismissed by Daystrom as unintentional and that the crewman simply got in the way. However, all notion of continuing with the Multitronic computer project was dropped when the M5 completely usurped control of the USS Enterprise and engaged the other Constitution vessels at full power, while they were prepared for simulated combat. Taking the USS Excalibur by surprise, the M5 killed all aboard the vessel, around 400 to 430 souls based on Kirk's estimates, and the full complement of a Constitution class. Unsurprisingly, this led to the termination of the program. The M5 and Daystrom himself was committed to a mental facility to recover from the experience. It was seen by many as an attempt from a renowned programmer to capture lightning in the bottle twice, and he was given so much operational leniency as he was the man who effectively pioneered Federation Starship computers as we know them. This project, as far as I can tell, has seen the single greatest direct loss of life due to a failed Federation-founded experiment. So can you think of any others that I missed? I can think of a few, but these are the ones that had the plug pulled for their failures. There were many transporter accidents and the like, but transporters for the most part are a successful technology employed by hundreds of species. Warp Drive 2 is damaging to subspace, but Starfleet has been taking steps to combat the damage ever since it was discovered, and Warp Drive never failed as a concept. So, what do you think? Disagree with my list, or think that the Omega Directive should be at the top? Let me know below, and thank you for watching. I've been Rick, and until next time, okay, geez, fine. Oh, you know what, one of you guys can take care of it. I got the last one. Goodbye. The phaser is the directed energy weapon of choice for Starfleet and the Federation of Planets. The term is an acronym for Phased Energy Rectification and a form of particle weapon. But why this form of technology? In its history, the Star Trek universe has displayed a wide variety of energy weapons, ranging from laser technology to plasma weapons and even unknown energies that are off the charts. Most other powers of the Trek universe end up pursuing disruptors as their primary weapons for both ship and personal combat, and very few species choose to pursue phaser research over disruptors. Hi all, Rick here, and today we're looking into the history, pros and cons of the Federation's energy beams of choice. So, phasers work by generating Nadian particles and directing the excited particle stream as an energy beam or pulse. Pew pew! The energy source was apparently plasma, that was then focused through a phase emitter. The stream of nadions that were then produced are what's seen when the phaser is discharged. So effectively a phaser beam is a stream of these particles hammering into its target, transferring the energy to the target, giving it the definition of a particle weapon. Disruptors are the most common form of particle weapon and follow a similar principle, and although they seem to operate on a wider range of particle bases, they all share a similar effect. That is, that disruptors, well, disrupt. The stream of directed energy that a disruptor produces damages and disrupts the structure of the target at a molecular level. Disruptors also have a wider range of energy sources and can utilize particles other than nadions, such as thoron, tetrion and polarons. Polaron being the purple flavour of choice for the Dominion. In the year 2151, a fledgling Starfleet was in the midst of replacing its plasma weapons with phased weaponry. Some of the earliest examples of this included the handheld phase pistol and the ship-mounted phase cannons. As phase pistols could run off of plasma power packs, this evolution of the tech was probably brought about by the creation of the phase emitter. This marks the point of divergence from most species, as many, like the Romulan Star Empire, continued refining the use of plasma to produce more damaging effects. Now, speculation here, but not without basis. I suspect that the phase emitter introduces a modulation or effect into the particle stream that makes certain particle types, such as nadions, have differing properties from a regular particle stream, marking the key identifier of a phase weapon from a disruptor. Plasma is effectively ionized gas, and the plasma we see discharged as weaponry in Star Trek basically burns and vaporizes on contact, making its use as a weapon obvious. Though it still has its uses, even by the Borg, many other species continue to look for a better way of blowing each other up and usually settle on another form of disruptor or antimatter. Starfleet, meanwhile, despite dabbling with laser tech in the mid-23rd century, continued to pursue phaser technology. Although, yes, they did also develop their own antimatter warheads in the form of photon torpedoes, that's a separate topic. It should be noted that some other species that used phasers, like the Ferengi, may have simply used the term for its technically accurate description of the phasing state of the energy produced by their plasma weapons. As of the 23rd century, phasers were standard on all ships and as personal arms, having replaced nearly all other options for Starfleet vessels and crew. But it is with this commitment to phaser tech that we begin to see the benefits that they bring. Their utilisation. Phasers are particle weapons, yes, but the Federation's exclusive adherence to nadion-based phased energy has led them to create a multi-purpose tool that is much more diverse in the field than a disruptor. This perfectly mimics the Starfleet and Federation ethos. Whereas a disruptor can only disrupt, damage and destroy, a phaser is a tool as well as a weapon. From handheld to shipside, phasers have been shown to do a lot and have a staggering number of settings, whereas a disruptor's utilisation extends from vaporise to wound. This suggests that there is something inherent to phaser technology that allows for a wider range of uses from a single source. Starting from its low power settings, a phaser can transfer heat to an object to warm it, making it an ideal survival situation tool as it can trap heat in objects, such as rocks, making for a short-term source of warmth. Higher settings can transfer enough energy of a specific frequency to temporarily shut down a nervous system, putting the target into a stunned state. Technically, stunning a target is painless, but I imagine that it's not a pleasant sensation either, judging by many a reaction to being stunned. Lingering effects from a stun are minor and pass in time, and this is where they trump disruptors. A disruptor can stun, but it does so by disrupting the nervous system, meaning that permanent damage is more likely. The stun effect of a phaser, on the other hand, can be modified to be momentary paralysis of an extremity, or to render a target unconscious by leaving a residual energy within the body to keep the nerve impulses suppressed. Higher stun settings could still kill a person if they hit somewhere vital, such as the brain, or the target received multiple successive hits. At a quarter power, a standard Federation sidearm would kill most humanoids by ramping up this stun effect to deadly levels. Phasers could go to much higher settings, and prolonged fire from a phaser beam exacerbated these effects. After all, it is emitting a stream of highly energized particles, and therefore did produce both heat from friction and concussive force. Phasers could quite easily shatter objects, and on maximum settings, vaporize whatever the beam struck, sometimes explosively. At this level, a phaser and disruptor basically have the same effect. The fact that phaser technology allowed for such a low to high yield usage means that a much wider degree of effects could be utilised by ingenious Starfleet technicians. Phasers were commonly used as cutting implements in absence of the correct gear, and the beam could be altered to such a fine level as to create a semi-effective welding torch. Again, most disruptors we see only seem to destroy. Hand phasers could also be used to drill through solid rock, and even had a setting called the disruptor setting that mimicked the effects of disruptor. Another advantage of a phaser was that it could be easily altered to cycle through differing phase frequencies, allowing it to stay ahead of board adaptation for a time and even hit objects who are out of phase with reality, like anti-vaxxers. I mean, like certain interphasing cloaks. A phaser emitted could also be sent to wide beam dispersion, but such a tactic likely was far reduced from the effective power output of a single beam. The most we ever see from a wide beam shot is a moderate stun effect. Again, most disruptors seem to lack this ability to alter settings on the fly, without specialised designs. The handheld phasers had many settings and intuitive adaptations to make them as much of a tool in the field as a tricorder. I can't think of a more Federation approach to a weapon. Another race to develop the phaser was the Bajorans, a species with a relatively peaceful history. Well,